So in this first part of the salon exercise, we're going to be working in Photoshop, doing a mock-up of our website using layers in Photoshop, and then exporting assets from Photoshop to be used in our web page, which we'll put together in Dreamweaver. So the first place to start is in Blackboard Learn. Under Resources, I've put a Salon Practice Skills, which will download the salonassets.zip. Once that's down, open it up and take that assets folder and put it somewhere you can find. I'm putting it on the desktop. Inside the Salon Assets folder, you'll find a content text file, you'll find a PSD file with gallery images, a PSD file with the icon for our salon, and a PSD file called salon.psd, which has our website laid out. So I'm just going to load up salon.psd in Photoshop, and you'll see here that I've made up a number of layers: the name and logo of the company, the nav bar. I've put them outside of these pages because I want them to appear on every page. So we have a contacts page, we have a gallery page, which will have lots of nice pictures of all the styles that this salon does, an about page, and last but not least, a home page. And this is where we'll start. So I'm just going to turn off all of these layers, which are layers that I'm going to make in Dreamweaver. And what I'm left with really is the background image. So I'm going to export that by going Save to for the web. I'm going to leave it as a JPEG. JPEGs are good for nicely compressed photographs. The size of it is 55.3, so it's already really quite compressed. You can adjust the settings here for quality. Anything up to about 100K is fine for this image. I'm happy with the quality of that. I'm going to save this into my desktop folder, and I like to have, and I've got an earlier version of it there, I like to have a folder with my images in it, maybe a pics folder, and I'm going to call this Salon Home Background. Really more descriptive, is good. We've got 5 pages in this website, so just calling them all Salon Background might actually get confusing. So Home Background or Salon Home Background is less confusing. I'll just replace what's there. Okay, so now we're going to open up Dreamweaver. So if you go to Adobe Dreamweaver, fire it up. I'm using the new Adobe C. So once Dreamweaver has finished its pretty loading screen, you'll get the welcome screen. Don't be too worried about all the different options here. Most of the time we will start a project in Dreamweaver with a HTML file. So that's what we're going to do now by clicking on that HTML file, and we see the basic Dreamweaver interface. In Dreamweaver, as in all the old versions, we have at the top level the code, the split, and the design view. I like to arrange the left-hand side into the 3 panels I use the most: the designer panel, the CSS designer panel, the files, and the insert panel. So I've gotten rid of everything else that I don't feel I need. Rather than just jump straight in and start making the HTML file look like my website, the first thing I'm going to do is over on the Files panel, I'm going to create a website. And a website is, for Dreamweaver, just defining a folder that is the root folder for your website. Everything else fits in there. So I'm going to create a new site. I'm going to call it Salon, and I'm going to point it to my Salon Assets folder. This will be the root directory of my Salon website. I may end up changing the name of that folder, but at the moment it's fine. Now, that is now done, and you can have numerous site definitions going on at any one time, depending on what sort of projects you're working on. Now that I've defined a site, I'm going back to my page, Untitled1, and I'm going to save this in my root directory as index.html. Index lowercase .html means something to a web browser or to a web server. It's the default file in that folder that a server will go to get an index into that website, into that folder. So that's important. There should be an index.html in any web folder. Now, I'm going to start with my page by setting up some page properties. By clicking in the page view and clicking on the page properties windows, I get a dialog box which gives me a lot of options for setting up my page. I'm going to choose two things, well, three really. I'm going to choose a background color, which will be a sort of a reddish orange, partly because that seems to go well with the Susan Salon, the Salon design that we've seen so far. I'm going to choose for my background image, you guessed it, Salon Home Background JPEG. And when I apply that, I'll see that already I have the beginnings of my website here. So now I'm going to create the logo box that sits in here containing the logo, the main heading, and the subheading. I'll create an ID called logo box. I'm going to make a rule for this one that says it's going to have background color so I can see what I'm doing. Let's make it, I don't know, something a bit dark so we can see what we're doing. And we'll give it a size, say 300 by 200, and we'll make the positioning to be absolute. I won't say how far from the top or the right. We'll drag it into place once we've created it. So there's the rule, and there's the div tag. Because it's absolute positioned, we can adjust that to drag it around, and the left and top position will adjust in the style rule. I'm going to take out that text placeholder at the moment, and I'm going to insert an image. And the image I'm going to insert is the icon PNG that we made earlier. And if I hold down Shift and size that to about where I want it to be, I end up with something that looks like that. Now, I'm going to make a style rule for the image. So if I go to CSS Designer and say make a new style rule, I'm going to get, because it's selected, logo box image will be a style rule. The one thing I want to do about the image is to set the positioning to be not absolute this time, but relative. That'll be relative to its container box. So now, as I move them, I'm getting both of them moving together. This is what I want. Now I'm going to create the heading, the main heading, My Salon, and I want to use the HTML heading 1 tag, but I do not want the image to be part of that. So I'm going to make sure that heading 1 is just around my salon. You can see there that I've done that. Now, my salon, I want it to float up here. To do that, I actually have to make the logo float left so that this will sit up here. So I'm going with my logo highlighted. I'm just going to make that float left, and that'll make my salon sit up there. My salon doesn't have a rule yet, so with my salon highlighted, I'm going to create a rule, logo box heading 1, and I'm going to make heading 1 to be positioned relative, and I can now use the relative positioning controllers of left and right to position it more or less where I want to be. Text, I want to make it white, and that's actually pretty close to what I want there. The subheading will be similar. I want to create hair and styling as my subheading. I'm going to use the HTML h2 tag for this. And hair and styling in h2. I will do similar things for this. I'm going to create a rule for logo box heading 2, and that rule will have the text color to be a lightish gray. The positioning will be relative again, and again I can use my controllers to do some fine control over where that actually will sit. Text-wise, I think we're going to go with an italic look. We'll make it a little smaller than the main heading, and that's about what I want. Now I'll just check one more time that if I take the entire salon box, I'm taking everything with it. Now that I've got those together, I really don't need that background color anymore. So I'm going to go back to my logo box and just get rid of the background color. And that is my logo box done. The next thing I want to do is a set of navigation buttons. And I'm going to put a div tag in called navbar. That's a fairly common name for a navigation bar. So navbar is my div tag. It's an ID. For the nav tag, I'm going to start off with, say a width of I don't know, 600 pixels, a height of 100, and I'm going to set a background color here so I can see what I'm doing. So there we go. That's a nice temporary color to see what I'm doing, and the positioning will be again absolute. So let's apply that and put in the nav bar. There's the nav bar there, and I'm going to shift it somewhere there. In fact, I'm already thinking that's probably a bit too thick, so I can adjust that to be about there. I'm going to get rid of the contents there. To be honest, I'd much rather have a color that showed me the area of my div tag rather than some text in there. So there's my div tag. Inside here, I want to create a div tag, which this time I'm going to use the class, and I'm going to call it nav button for this style. A class is used whenever you have more than one of an item. So this is this nav button. We're going to have 4 of them. And let's create a nav button. Let's make the box have a width of maybe 100, a height of 40, and a background color of no, let's make it just black. What's that look like? So nav button goes here. I'm getting rid of some of the text that's in there. Don't need it. Why have I think Dreamweaver is having some trouble rendering that. Okay, so we have a nav button in here, and I'm just going to type home into the first nav button. Let's just go to the nav button at the moment and make the text color to be white so we can see it. Let's give the text some padding. Say a few pixels from the top. Too much. 10 seems about right. And some padding from, actually, rather than padding from the left, let's just make the text alignment to be centered. Okay, now if I want to create 4 buttons for my navigation, then I can just copy and paste it 4 times. I've got home, about, gallery, and contact are my 4 pages. Now, one of the things that we would want to do is for the nav buttons, we would want to make sure they all float left. And now that puts them into a line like that. Also, they're a bit jammed up close to each other at the moment, so I would be inclined to, with each button, give it some margin as well. Padding is the space inside the box, margin is the space outside of the box. So let's give each one, say, 10 pixels to the left, and that opens all of them up. This nav bar container can sit in more like that. In fact, I'm going to get rid of the background color here. Background color. We are able to drag our nav bar around to position it, but the nav bar itself is invisible. It's the buttons that are all important. So now I'm going to put in the text box, and I'm going to make it a class in case we ever want to use more than one of these on a page. My CSS rule for text box, I'm going to set the box to be So 300 by 300. Again, I can change that as I need to. Positioning, I'll make it absolute until I know what I'm doing. The background color, now I'm going to make it RGBA. And the A, the alpha, lets me specify transparency. So I'm going to make it a transparent red like we had in Photoshop. Okay, let's see what we get there. And there's my box, and that's what it looks like. And already I can see I would like to just adjust the size of it a bit so it's more like that. Okay, and let's set some properties for that in the CSS designer. So we're in text box. I would like the font to be white. I would like the font family to be the default. That's fine, but we definitely need some padding in there. What does say? 9 pixels at the top and 10 pixels. 10 pixels at the side and 10 pixels at the top. Okay. One more thing I want to do with the box is to round off the corners, and that's under the box properties. For radiuses, we want to make sure that they're all linked, and if we set that up to, say, I don't know, 20 pixels. Now, I'm not seeing the rounding here, but if I click the live button, I should get a preview of those rounded corners. Now, I would just want to demonstrate something. If we save what we've done so far and just have a look at it in Google Chrome, for example, you'll see that everything at the moment just sits off to the left-hand side. Now, what we would prefer to have is to have our salon page floating in a container that is always centered in the browser window, no matter what side where the browser window is, that it centers. So that's what we're going to do next. So back in Dreamweaver, let me show you what I'm going to do here. I'm going to make a div tag called container. Now, container is not a HTML special word, but it's become kind of common to call it. I've put a div tag called container opening here and closing here. So everything is sitting inside container. And container is what I'm going to make to contain and to float things in the correct size. So if I go back to container, if I've got basically all of the containers selected, I'm going to create a rule for container, and I'm going to set some properties. So I'm just going to set some properties for the container. I'm going to set it, say, 600 pixels wide by 600 high at the moment, just so we can see what we're doing. I'm going to set a background color for our container, and I'm going to set in the positioning, I'm going to show you a trick for centering things. I'm going to set in the shorthand 0 auto as the properties for the margin. Have a look at what happens now when we save it and preview it in a browser. And now what we find is that our container is centering perfectly in a browser larger than 600 pixels wide. However, our contents are not actually sitting in there. So let's change that. So back in Dreamweaver, I'm going to set my elements here that were absolute positioned to be, instead of absolute, I'm going to make them relative. So they're now relative to the container that they sit in, which is our big container. I might have to do some adjustments now to the top and the left to make them sit where I want them to sit, but that's not too bad. Same with this one is absolute positioned. That's the nav bar. I'm making it relative, and it's got to be a lot further up to be in the right position. And the last one is the text box, which I'm now going to make relative, and again take it to somewhere like that. I'll just save that, and we'll check that in Google one more time. And now we find that the container is centering and all the items are moving relative to the container. So the last thing I want to do is actually take the background image out of the body and put it into the container. So first of all, I'm going to the body, and in the background I'm going to take out the background image. While I'm there, I'm going to actually put in a background color, and that pink, which is close to the container color, I find is not bad. Let's use that. Okay, in the container, I'm going to put the background image, and that's about what I would like it to be at the moment. Let's just check that one more time in the browser and see how it's looking. Okay, that's not bad, although I notice we've got a little repeat here going on. So if we go back to the container and set a background repeat to no repeat, then that pretty much gives us what we want. Now, up until now, I've only been making one page, and all of the CSS is in a style tag up in the header. This is the rule, all the rules we've made so far. Now, I'm going to start, I'm pretty happy with the behavior of this page, and I want all my other pages to behave the same way. So rather than keep the style here, I'm going to take all the style out of this and put it in an external style sheet and link it. So that's what we'll do next. So I've just grabbed the entire style tag, and I'm basically going to get rid of it. Command X. If we go back now, it's frightening. All that good work we've done is undone. But don't panic. We're going to go File, New, and create a CSS file. And we're going to save this file right in our Salon website as salon.css. And I'm going to paste everything in here. Now there's one trick here. If you took the style tags with you, you have to delete the style tags. CSS doesn't know what to do. It'll generate an error if it does that. Now the only thing we haven't done is to link this style sheet to the to our HTML page. So I'm back in the index.html, and I'm going to attach an existing CSS file to my index file. If I just browse to my site here, I should be able to find the salon.css that I just created, and we're going to link it, and we're back. So now we, instead of having all of that stuff on, all of the CSS on one page, on each page, we have a link to the salon.css, which we have up here. Or in Dreamweaver, we can close that, we can actually see the source code and the CSS of a page that it's linked to. So now I'm going to create some links for all these buttons. If I click on the first button, we've got home here, and I'm going to create the link to be index.html. The about page is going to have a link of about.html. The gallery, you guessed it, will have a link of gallery, lowercase, gallery.html, and the last one, contact, have a link of contact.html. Now, I haven't made these pages yet, so let's make them. The index page is already made. I'm going to save the index page as about.html. I'm going to save it as gallery.html. I'm going to save it as contact.html. Ooh. Now, I'm in the About page, and I want to change the background for my container. I'm going to try something a little different. Instead of putting it in the salon.css, which will change the background for all of the pages, I'm going to go define in the page. That gives me a style tag option, and inside the style tag option I'm going to create a selector. Well, let me just highlight container first and create a rule for container, and you'll see that that's created a style tag in the About page for the container. So I can now go to the background image, and I'm going to go to my pics folder where I've exported the About image, and there's my About image, and I'll repeat that for the gallery and for the contact. Once I have put the background images, and you'll notice that About is the same as contact, but in any case, once I've got those background images into the pages, I can preview in the browser, and I'll find that in fact my navigation is now working. I can use my navigation to go to the different pages.